My son kicked me out when he found out I lost my job, but he had no idea I had a secret fortune. The afternoon sunlight poured softly through the lace curtains of the old Florida bungalow, casting delicate patterns on the worn wooden floor. Eleanor stood in the kitchen, carefully arranging a plate of oatmeal cookies she had baked from memory, Michael's childhood favorite. She hadn't seen her son in over a year, and when he called to say he was stopping by during his business trip, her heart fluttered with a hope she didn't dare name. She had spent the entire morning cleaning, even though her back ached from arthritis. The table was set with her finest china, the kind she used only on holidays. When Michael arrived, he walked in briskly, phone in hand, barely offering her a glance. He was dressed in an expensive tailored suit, hair slicked back, and shoes that didn't belong to the boy who used to run barefoot in the garden. He gave her a quick hug, distracted, eyes on the text messages lighting up his screen. She offered him tea, which he declined, cookies, which he didn't touch. They sat across from each other at the table, the silence between them filled only by the ticking of the old wall clock. Eleanor folded her hands, trying to find the right words, then finally spoke. I wanted to tell you something, Michael. I lost my job last month. They let me go. Said the bookstore was downsizing. I tried finding something else, but she looked down, embarrassed. It's been hard. Michael looked up, finally, but not with concern, more with annoyance. He sighed and leaned back in the chair. So what does that mean, Mom? Are you expecting me to help you out or something? She blinked, stunned. No, sweetheart, I just thought you should know. Things are getting tight. I might need to stay with you for a while. Just until I get back on my feet. His expression changed from annoyance to irritation. That's not going to work. I've got 2 kids. Sarah's working from home, and we don't even have a guest room anymore. You should have thought about this before quitting. I didn't quit, she said softly. They let me go. Well, it's not my responsibility, Mom. The parent, you're supposed to be the one who planned for the future, not me. Eleanor swallowed hard. Her fingers trembled on the edge of the table. I never asked you for anything, Michael. I thought maybe you thought wrong. He cut in. You raised me, yes, and I appreciate that. But I have my own life now. I can't carry your dead weight to The words landed like a slap. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She had heard many things in her life, disappointments, betrayals, even heartbreak, but never this. Not from her son. Not the child she held through fevered nights. The boy she fed before herself during the hardest winters. She didn't cry, not then. She simply stood, nodded, and walked quietly to her room. That night, as she folded her clothes into a single worn suitcase, she took down the family photos from the wall. Her hands paused over one, Michael, at age 10, grinning, arms around her neck. She gently kissed the frame and packed it away. By sunrise, she was gone. No note, no goodbye, just silence, and the echo of a sentence she would never forget. The Greyhound bus pulled into Tallahassee just past midnight, its headlights cutting through the heavy southern fog. Eleanor stepped off with her suitcase in one hand and a faded handbag in the other. The station was nearly empty, just a couple of teenagers, sleeping across plastic chairs, and a janitor mopping the tile floor without looking up. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay where she'd been. Her legs ached with every step as she walked toward the streetlights. Her shoes, years old, pinched at the sides. The map on her phone had long stopped working to outdate it. But she remembered a flyer she'd seen weeks ago at the church bulletin board. St. Mary's Shelter for Senior Women, Compassion, Care, and a Fresh Start. She held on to those words like a lifeline. By the time she reached the shelter, her hands were cold and her shoulders hunched from the night air. The woman at the front desk, a nurse named Carlyle, looked up, startled, then softened when she saw Eleanor's face. Without many questions, she led her inside. The hallway smelled like detergent and warm soup, and the walls were lined with drawings made by children from local schools, bright colors, trying to cover the weight of lives fallen through the cracks. Eleanor's room was small, barely enough space to turn around, a narrow bed, a single window facing the parking lot, a dresser missing a handle, but it was safe. That night, as she lay staring at the ceiling, she didn't cry. She thought of her husband, David, and how he used to rub her hands when they were cold. She thought of Michael's words, replaying them over and over like a broken radio. Asterisk the next morning, she joined the others in the common room. There were 8 women, all older, all carrying their own private griefs. One had been a jazz singer in Detroit, now too frail to hold a microphone. Another used to teach 3rd grade until her pension vanished in a scam. One had children who hadn't called in 5 years. They didn't ask Eleanor what brought her there. They all knew that look, asterisk over time, she opened up in pieces, shared stories of her garden, her husband's love for crossword puzzles, the way Michael used to collect bottle caps. But there was one thing she never spoke about: the money. Asterisk years ago, after David died, she started saving every extra dollar. She remembered how carefully he had taught her to read the markets, to understand investments. While Michael was growing into his business career, Eleanor had quietly built her own fortune behind a mask of modesty. Dividend stocks, early investments in tech, some real estate, and yes, even cryptocurrency. What started as a hobby turned into something incredible. Asterisk she watched the numbers grow each year, but she never touched a cent. Not when her car broke down, not when her roof leaked, not even when her arthritis medication became too expensive. She needed to know who loved her for her, not for what she could give. Asterisk the shelter staff had no idea. To them, she was just another forgotten mother, trying to stay warm and get 3 meals a day, and that was exactly what she wanted. Asterisk then, one afternoon, as she folded laundry with Carla, she asked for a favor. She wanted to mail a letter. No return address, no signature, just instructions and something that would change the world. Her son thought he ruled. Asterisk Michael was in the middle of a video conference in his glass-walled New York office when his assistant handed him the envelope. It was plain, nothing special until he opened it. Asterisk the letter inside was handwritten. The script was delicate but strong, each word etched with purpose. Asterisk you once told me I was dead weight. This letter carries the weight of everything I never said. Asterisk attached to the note was a thick packet of documents, legal paperwork outlining a trust fund, a list of assets, account numbers, and a notarized will. $6.3 million. He blinked at the numbers. Stocks in blue-chip companies, titles to rental properties in 4 states, cryptocurrency wallets with balances that read like lottery winnings, all under the name Eleanor Grace, and none of it going to him. Instead, the estate was divided into 3 parts: a permanent endowment to St. Mary's Shelter, a grant to fund affordable housing for elderly women abandoned by their families, and a 3rd part to support mental health programs for older adults suffering from neglect. Asterisk Michael felt the floor vanish beneath him. His heart pounded. His palms went cold. Asterisk he turned the letter over, hoping for more. A reason, a chance to fix what he had broken. But there was nothing else. No, I forgive you. No, please understand. Just silence. The kind that speaks louder than any scream. Asterisk he sat there frozen, the sound of his own heartbeat roaring in his ears, holding a piece of paper that weighed more than any inheritance he could ever spend. Asterisk. The sea whispered gently against the shore as Eleanor stepped out onto the wooden porch of her small beachfront cottage. The breeze tugged at the hem of her linen skirt, and gulls cried softly overhead. Her silver hair was pulled back into a loose bun, her face weathered but serene. At 73, she had never felt more alive. The cottage had white shutters and a blue door, just like the home she once dreamed of with David. She paid for it in cash without blinking. No mortgage, no fear, just peace. Asterisk mornings began with tea on the porch and long walks along the coast. She tended to a small garden, read old poetry books, and wrote letters she never sent. But her days were not idle. Eleanor had become the silent guardian of a growing network of homes, affordable, warm, and dignified spaces for women like her. Women who had once been discarded. Asterisk she visited the shelter in Tallahassee, often bringing books, quilts, and sometimes just herself. The women there welcomed her like a sister. No one treated her differently. Not even after the media began to notice. Eleanor declined most interviews, but she quietly supported a growing wave of change behind the scenes. Asterisk one day, she found herself in New York City for a meeting with a nonprofit board. She wore a navy coat and simple heels, her purse tucked beneath her arm. As she stepped out of the taxi, she paused in front of a towering glass building, Michael's company headquarters. Her reflection shimmered next to the sleek windows. A ghost of the mother who once stood outside his dorm room, waiting with sandwiches he never thanked her for. Asterisk she didn't go inside. She didn't need to. Instead, She crossed the street and sat on a bench beneath a tree. She watched people rushing by, some young, some old, none of them seeing her, and then, there he was, Michael, walking fast, phone to his ear, lines of stress carved deep into his forehead. His suit looked expensive, but his eyes didn't. He didn't see her, but she saw him. He looked lost, not the kind of lost that needs directions, but the kind that comes from forgetting where you came from. Her heart didn't ache anymore, not like before. It simply swelled with something deeper, a quiet release, a gentle letting go. Weeks later, the New York Times published a feature article titled "The Forgotten Mother Who Gave It All Away." It told Eleanor's story in sweeping paragraphs. A mother cast aside, a hidden fortune, and a mission that bloomed from betrayal. Photos showed her laughing with shelter residents, standing beside newly built homes, planting trees with trembling hands. Michael saw the article late at night, alone in his apartment after his wife had taken the kids to her parents for the weekend. He clicked through the photos slowly, stopping at one, Eleanor holding a small child on her lap, smiling at something just out of frame. He stared at her face, older than he remembered, but lit with something he hadn't seen in years. He tried to call her again. This time, the number had been disconnected. He drafted emails. None were sent. What could he say? That he was wrong, that he was sorry, that he thought she was weak, when she was in fact the strongest person he'd ever known. Eleanor didn't need his apology. Her life was full meaning, of freedom, of people who didn't measure her worth by her usefulness. Outside her cottage, a young tree stood tall. Just last spring, she had planted it herself, her knees sore from the effort. At its base was a simple bronze plaque, polished by the salty wind. For every mother whose worth was seen too late, she sat beside it often, not to mourn, but to remember. One evening, a little girl from the neighborhood ran up to her porch with a flower in her hand. Eleanor bent down and accepted it with a smile. Thank you, sweet girl, she whispered. The child looked up at her and asked, "Are you someone important?" Eleanor's eyes glistened. She gently tucked the flower into her hair and said, "I think I am now." And for the first time in a long, long time she truly believed it.